This is the rig I use for mudsuckers. It's my smallest split shot, my smallest hook, and a little worm fed mostly onto the hook, as you can see, and then just a bit off the hook. That's basically the rig. Then we're gonna come over here. It's low tide. Let's see if I can get the focus. There we go. It's low tide, as you can see. We're just gonna make our way down here without dying. These things, believe it or not, they look dry, but nothing down here is dry. That's why I'm wearing rubber boots. And then right here, I'm just gonna try not to drop my camera in the water, and I'm just gonna cast it just like that. Let it sink down to the bottom, and just barely lift it up so that it moves from rock to rock. And then if I find a rock that has a mudsucker in it, I'll get a bite. It's really low tide, so I'm trying to find out where they are. And there was none there. Cast this out again. It's really windy. Just gonna let that sink. Hopefully, woo. See, sinking. You can hear the West Sac goats. Super windy. Here we go. Try number 2. It's beautiful. Low tide. Oh, that was a bite. Yanked it right out of his mouth. You gotta be quick or they'll yank you into a hole. There's a bite. There's a bite. Next time I feel a decent one, I'm gonna yank him. Missed him. Now you can see they've come real close to robbing that worm. I'm not even gonna re-put it back on there. I'm just gonna stick them back out. There's a bite. Got him. Oh, I had him that time. All right, back in the water. I think this is a bluegill. See if he gets greedier. Oh, I think that pissed him off. This is the difficulties of getting bait. That's why I don't often fish with bait. I'm too cheap to buy my own bait. Lift it up a little bit, move it. Just bumping it over rocks. There's a bite. Nope, missed him. Back in the water. He's little. It's okay though. Got a nice circle hook for him. Alright. There's a bite. Dang. This is fun. This is the fun part of fishing. You get lots of bites. Oh, I got a bunch of weeds. So I changed up the rig just a little bit. You can see I put a split shot about 3 inches or so above the hook in hopes that it'll help me get them. I'm just gonna, again, we're not that far from shore. We're talking just a couple feet. Wind blew it right back at me. That's the downside to windy days like this. Super windy. It wasn't this windy when I left my house. So that's a bite. Look at that mudsucker. See? That's a real lemon. And there you go. Perfect. And right there is a good bait-sized fish. This is the setup. Okay, so I have a sliding ball, a swivel. Don't forget the bead. The bead is super important. And then I have about a 12-inch leader and this guy on a circle hook. And I'm gonna get him in the water before he dies. All right, so I just cast. You can see. What I do is I turn the bait clicker on. So I've already clicked it. That's off. So it's on that's on the main fighting drag there. You flick it down and that's there. So I can't show you both at the same time. But anyways, it's just casted. So the weight hit the bottom right there. I'm holding the line tight. I clicked it in gear so that it's a lighter drag than my main drag. And I can pull this back and keep the line super tight when I set this down. That way I know it's not going to get tangled in those weeds. I don't know if you can see that very well. There's a whole bunch of weeds right there and it's just not some fun stuff. I try to avoid it at all costs. But yeah, that's my setup. I've had this set up for a little while. I always check, see where the letters are on the spool when I set it down, because you never know. If you get a bite and you come back and you didn't hear it and the letters are in a different spot, and you know something happened because the mudsucker can't pull it because it's a lot tighter than what the mudsucker can do. And then we can go, that line that goes all the way out. Now I use really light line. I'm not a huge fan of heavy line. I know a lot of people use really heavy line from shore. And you know, that works from them. They probably catch fish on it. And you know, whatever, it works for them. But myself, I prefer a lighter line when I'm fishing. I use, in the rivers, this is 12 pound. Now my leader's a little bit heavier. I have a 25 pound leader. That little 12-inch leader is 25 pound. Mainly because it was the only spool I had with me, and I rode my bike here, so I didn't feel like riding my bike back and getting what I needed. It's not a huge deal. I'll live with it. You can see, just basically it's a waiting game from here. The tide's coming in. It's much higher than it was. My feet are now, most of my footprints now are underwater. And you can see now the current has moved. So now the current is pointing straight at us instead of over here. And that's just to show you that the difference when the tide comes in, as it changes. Now I like fishing when the tide comes in. My favorite tide to fish is the outgoing tide. mainly because I think I get a lot more bites on the outgoing tide. I've had a lot more luck on the outgoing tide, at least from shore, at this spot, on this side of the river, because I've fished in many different spots, and the outgoing tide I generally get a lot more bites on. The incoming tide's nice. I like to use bait, or like live bait, sometimes on the incoming tide, because that's when the mudsuckers are trying to find their new spot in the higher spots, and they're moving around, and the striper know it, so they're hunting them. And that's what this guy's supposed to be looking like. He's supposed to be looking like a mudsucker in the wrong spot, because I casted him pretty deep. But he's basically out there in the channel. Not the main channel, mind you. The main channel is way beyond my reach at this spot. He's in the channel that they dug for the pipes that come out of the residential area for when it like rains really hard. And when those pipes are on, I tell you, that's, if you ever see a pipe that's on, that's when you want to do something. You want to fish the pipes. That was a bite. I don't know if you saw that. I saw it do the line. It didn't pull out any drag. I'll be interested to see. Sometimes I catch stuff out of the corner of my eye and I think I got a bite. And I've never recorded at the same time I saw one of those things happen. And that's what just happened there. I thought I saw something twitch the line pretty hard. But it wasn't enough to pull the bait runner. So we'll see. If that was something I saw or if that was something I'm just making up out of my mind. I don't know. You be the judge. We'll look at the letters. I don't think they've moved. Yeah. This is sometimes kind of slow. That's okay. So something just pulled him. The bait runner pulled about 6 inches of line out, and then it stopped. And I know that mudsucker cannot pull the line, or the bait, you know, the drag that I have set for the bait runner on this, because it's just barely enough to drag the sinker, and I have a 3-ounce sinker on there, or it might be a 2-ounce sinker. Not 100% sure on that. I'll check that. But, and you can see that mudsucker. You can see the line twitching because he's swimming around, and they usually don't swim around. They usually kind of just sit on the bottom. So whenever they start to swim around, usually means something is there kind of playing with him, or maybe looking at him, or not 100% sure. But I'm watching down here. This is my old reel, old and faithful. I have the letters on the spool kind of tell me how much line has gone out, because I can kind of see how many times around that spool is gone, and that's kind of what I use as a reference. Something kind of interesting that I noticed, you'll see the tide is making like mud as it comes in, but the birds across the way, let's take a look at those. Let me set this cup down. All right. Whee! Those guys, look at them. They're now in the water. See, what happens is when the tide comes in like this, all the little fish cannot hang out where they were before, because if they do, the bigger fish can now fit in that water. And that side is much like this side over here. You cannot see it very well, but there's weeds, and I was walking in them and it all looked like mud, but when the tide comes in, some of them float and they make this weed bed right here. And yeah, those guys over there, they're making a killing. I'm watching them pull a little bait fish out of that area over there. Every couple minutes or so I see them pull a little fish out. So they're doing a lot better than I am. But you know, they have a lot more practice. You can see I'm still, whoa, zoomed way in. There we go. Here I am. Just hoping for a bite. As you can see, I don't think it's moved.